The quivering Arcturian cringed in abject terror as Colonel Joseph Boyd rested a battered Gauss rifle on the bar. Memories of charred alien corpses and vaporized starships flickering through Boyd's mind, still frames from humanity's overwhelming victory in the Arcturian-human war. Colonel Boyd calmly sipped his whiskey in the dingy space station bar, his heavily scarred face illuminated by weak neon lights. The hulking Marine noticed the small grey Arcturian fidgeting a few seats down, seeming to muster the courage to approach. He observed the frail alien for a few moments, until it slowly shuffled over, nervously perching on a stool beside Boyd. You're Colonel Boyd, right? The famous human war hero who killed 1,000 Arcturian soldiers? The Arcturian's large black eyes darted around, as if expecting to be attacked at any moment. My name is Novak. I was hoping you could tell me, are the rumors true? About the human weapons that decimated our invasion fleet? Boyd let out a dry, humorless chuckle. He took another sip of whiskey, relishing the burn in his throat. He fixed Novak with a steely gaze, his voice low and gravelly. Kid, you don't know the half of it. Your people thought they could just roll in and take our planet. Thought we were just a bunch of primitive apes with sticks and stones. Well, you learned the hard way how wrong you were. The old soldier leaned back, his eyes distant as he recalled the events of that fateful war. The Arcturians, so confident in their advanced technology, had launched a full-scale invasion of Earth, but they were wholly unprepared for the fury of human resistance. Within days, the skies over Earth were filled with the burning wreckage of Arcturian ships, blasted out of orbit by an arsenal the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. I was a fighter pilot back then, Boyd continued, his voice tinged with pride and sorrow. I saw firsthand the devastation our weapons wrought, kinetic impactors that could shatter a ship with a single hit, directed energy weapons that sliced through hulls like a hot knife. We even jury-rigged our asteroid mining equipment into makeshift mass drivers. The Arcturians never stood a chance. Boyd paused, his gaze boring into Novak. You want to know why your people surrendered so quickly? Because they realized that if they didn't, we would have wiped them out, completely. And we would have done it with ease. That's the power of human ingenuity and determination. That's why you should pray to whatever gods you believe in that we never have a reason to turn our weapons on you again. As Novak sat in stunned silence, Boyd drained the last of his whiskey and stood up, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. He gave the young Arcturian a final haunting look. Remember this, kid. Humanity may seem like an easy target, but we're the ones you don't want to fuck with. Because if you do, we'll make sure it's the last mistake your species ever makes. With that, Colonel Joseph Boyd strode out of the bar, leaving Novak to contemplate the terrifying reality of human power and the wisdom of avoiding another war with the deceptively formidable inhabitants of Earth. The shaken Arcturian knew he must warn his leaders of the true extent of mankind's destructive capabilities, or risk the total annihilation of his race in a conflict they could never hope to win. Boyd continued his tale, his voice low and intense. The Arcturians thought they could break us by targeting our cities. They sent wave after wave of ground troops, hoping to crush our resistance, but they had no idea what they were walking into. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a fierce pride. We had prepared for this. For years we had been building a network of hidden bunkers beneath our cities, each one armed to the teeth with advanced railguns and missile silos. When the Arcturians landed, we were ready for them. Boyd's voice grew harder, his fists clenching at the memory. I remember the look on their faces when they first encountered our defenses. They had never seen weapons like ours before. Railguns that could punch through their armor like it was tissue paper. Missiles that could vaporize entire platoons in a single blast. We cut them down by the thousands, their bodies piling up in the streets. Novak's eyes were wide, his mouth agape as he listened to Boyd's account. The human's words painted a picture of carnage and destruction that was almost too horrific to imagine. But it wasn't just our heavy weapons that won the day, Boyd continued. We also had teams of special forces, armed with the latest in human technology, portable directed energy weapons that could slice through an Arcturian like a hot knife through butter, cloaking devices that made them virtually invisible. They infiltrated the enemy's bases, sabotaged their supply lines, and sowed chaos and confusion in their ranks. Boyd paused, a distant look in his eye as he recalled a particular memory. I remember one mission, a raid on an Arcturian command ship. My team and I snuck aboard, made our way to the main reactor. We planted our charges and got out just before the whole thing went up in a ball of flame. Crippled their entire fleet in one blow. Novak sat in stunned silence, trying to process the scale of the destruction Boyd was describing. He had always known that the humans were formidable warriors, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. In the end, it was our tenacity, our ingenuity, and our sheer fucking will to survive that won us the war, Boyd said, his voice filled with a grim satisfaction. The Arcturians thought they could break us, but they never stood a chance. We showed them what happens when you mess with the human race. Boyd took another swig of his whiskey, the ice clinking in the glass as he set it back down on the bar. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes taking on a distant look as he delved deeper into his memories. You know, kid, there was one weapon we had that really turned the tide of the war. Something so powerful, so devastating, that it made even the most hardened Arcturian soldier quake in their boots. Novak leaned forward, his eyes wide with morbid curiosity. What was it? We called it the Singularity Bomb, Boyd said, his voice low and almost reverent. It was no bigger than a small car, but it packed a punch like nothing else in the universe. We sent a team of our best infiltrators to deliver it right to the heart of the Arcturian homeworld. Boyd's eyes glazed over as he recalled the memory. I remember the moment it detonated. It was like watching the birth and death of a star all at once. The bomb created a miniature black hole right there on the surface of the planet. It started small, but it grew, consuming everything in its path. Buildings, ships, people, all of it sucked into that swirling vortex of darkness. Novak's jaw dropped, his mind struggling to comprehend the scale of destruction. It destroyed the entire planet? Boyd nodded grimly. Every last inch of it. When the black hole finally dissipated, there was nothing left. Just a gaping void in space where the Arcturian homeworld used to be. But how? Novak asked, his voice trembling. How could you create such a thing? Boyd shrugged, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's the thing about humans, kid. We're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Some say we're too reckless, too eager to play with forces we don't fully understand. But that's what makes us so dangerous. We're not afraid to go where others fear to tread. The old soldier took another sip of his drink, savoring the burn as it slid down his throat. The destruction of their homeworld broke the Arcturians' spirit. They knew they were beaten, that they had no hope of winning against a species that could wield such power. They surrendered soon after, and the war was over. Boyd's eyes took on a distant look once more as he recalled the signing of the peace treaty. I remember the look on the Arcturian leaders' faces as they put their signatures to paper. They were pale, shaken, like they'd seen a ghost. And in a way, I suppose they had. They knew how close they'd come to complete annihilation, to being wiped from the face of the universe by the very beings they'd sought to conquer. Boyd leaned back, his eyes distant as he recalled the tense standoff in the Galactic Council chambers. It was a sight to behold, kid. Dozens of alien races all clamoring to have their say about what should be done with humanity. Some wanted to sanction us, to limit our expansion into the galaxy. Others called for our technology to be seized and distributed among the Council races. He shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But Ambassador Carlyle, she wasn't having any of it. She stood there tall and proud, and looked those alien bastards right in the eye. Humanity, she said, will not be shackled by the fears of those who have not faced the same challenges we have. We have earned our place in the stars, and we will not be dictated to by those who would seek to control us. Boyd's voice took on a note of admiration as he recounted Carlyle's words. You could have heard a pin drop in that chamber. The aliens, they just stared at her, some in shock, others in outrage. But Carlyle, she didn't flinch. She just stared right back at them, daring them to challenge her. Novak leaned forward, his eyes wide. What happened next? What happened next? Boyd chuckled. The council blustered and postured, but in the end they backed down. They knew that humanity wasn't to be trifled with, not after what we'd done to the Arcturians. They realized that if they pushed us too far, we might just turn our weapons on them next. He took another sip of his drink, savoring the burn. That was a turning point for humanity, kid. It was the moment when we truly took our place on the galactic stage. No longer were we just some backwater species, content to stay on our little blue planet. We were a force to be reckoned with, a power that even the mighty Galactic Council had to respect. Boyd's eyes narrowed as he fixed Novak with a piercing stare. But it wasn't all smooth sailing from there. No, there were still those who sought to undermine us, to steal our secrets and use them against us. And that, kid, is where the real story begins. Boyd's expression darkened as he continued his tale, his grip tightening on his glass. But that was just the beginning, kid. In the years after the war, a new threat emerged from within our own ranks. A group called the Human Ascendancy, led by a man named Victor Carlson. Novak leaned forward, his brow furrowed. I've heard whispers of them. They believe in human supremacy, don't they? Boyd nodded grimly. Carlson and his followers saw the war as proof that humanity was destined to rule the galaxy. They started pushing for more aggressive expansion, more military build-up. And worst of all, they began developing new weapons in secret, weapons that made the Singularity Bomb look like a firecracker. He took a long swig of his drink, his eyes distant. I was part of a covert op, tasked with infiltrating one of their research facilities. It was supposed to be a simple snatch and grab, get in, steal the data, and get out. But nothing's ever that simple, is it? Boyd's voice dropped to a whisper, forcing Novak to lean in closer. We had to sneak past layers of security, avoid patrols at every turn. One false move, and we'd have been vaporized, but we made it to the data core and started the download. He shook his head, his expression haunted. That's when I saw it, Project Doomsday. A weapon designed to destroy entire star systems in one blow. The Ascendancy was planning to use it to bring the rest of the galaxy to heel. Novak's eyes widened in horror. Did they build it? I don't know, Boyd admitted. We were detected before the download finished. Had to fight our way out, blasters firing left and right. I took a hit to the shoulder, thought I was done for, but we made it out, just barely. He downed the rest of his drink in one gulp, slamming the glass on the bar. When I dug into the data we managed to steal, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Weapons that could crack a planet's core, missiles that could punch through a star's corona. They were insane, but if the Ascendancy could make them work. Boyd trailed off, his gaze fixed on some distant point. I knew then that the war wasn't over. It had only just begun, and this time, it wouldn't be the Arcturians we were fighting. It would be our own kind, humans drunk on power and willing to burn the galaxy to rule over its ashes. Novak sat back, his mind reeling from the implications of Boyd's words. The old soldier was right. The real battle was just beginning, and this time, the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Boyd paused, the weight of his memories pressing down on him like a physical force. He took a deep breath, then met Novak's gaze once more. But we weren't about to let the Ascendancy win, kid. Not after everything we'd been through, everything we'd sacrificed. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. We started reaching out to anyone who would listen. Alien leaders, resistance groups, even some of the more reasonable folks within the Ascendancy itself. It wasn't easy, let me tell you. There was a lot of bad blood, a lot of fear and mistrust on all sides. Boyd shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But we kept at it. Secret meetings in abandoned stations, encrypted transmissions, dead drops on backwater planets. Slowly, painfully, we started to build a coalition. Humans and aliens, united against a common enemy. He chuckled softly, lost in the memory. Never thought I'd see the day when I'd be working alongside a Zorgath or a Quixian, but desperate times and all that. Boyd's expression sobered as he continued. It all came to a head with Operation Prometheus. We'd gotten intel on the location of the Ascendancy's main weapons facility, where they were building their doomsday devices. We knew we had to take it out, and fast. He closed his eyes. the memories playing out behind his eyelids. It was a joint operation, humans and aliens working together. We had Arcturian hackers to take down the facility's security systems, Zorgath demolitions experts to rig the place to blow, even a couple of Quixian sharpshooters to cover our backs. Boyd's voice grew tense, his words coming faster. The infiltration was a thing of beauty, kid. We slipped in like ghosts, each team member doing their part with perfect precision. But once we were inside, all hell broke loose. He shook his head, his eyes distant. Alarms blaring, guards pouring in from every direction. We fought our way to the reactor core, taking heavy fire the whole way. I saw a Zorgath take a plasma bolt to the chest, a human get vaporized by a disruptor beam. But we kept pushing forward no matter the cost. He leaned back, his eyes refocusing on Novak. It was a major blow to the Ascendancy, setting their weapons program back by months, but more than that, it was a symbol, a message to the galaxy that we wouldn't go down without a fight, that we'd stand together against any threat. Boyd sighed, the weight of his memories heavy in the air. But the war was far from over, kid. The Ascendancy was wounded but not beaten, and they were about to strike back in a way none of us saw coming. Joseph leaned forward, his voice a hoarse whisper as he continued his grim tale. Our victory at the weapons facility was short-lived, kid. The Ascendancy retaliated with a vengeance. Mass arrests, forced interrogations, public executions. They did everything they could to crush the resistance and sow terror. He took a shuddering breath, his eyes haunted by the memories. I got reports from our contacts, stories that made my blood run cold. Families dragged from their homes in the dead of night, never to be seen again. Prisoners tortured until they broke, spilling secrets that doomed entire cells. Sympathizers gunned down in the streets as a warning to others. But we couldn't let them win. We had to keep fighting, no matter the cost. That's when we got word that one of our top alien leaders had been captured. They were holding him in a max security prison, deep in Ascendancy territory. It was a suicide mission, but we had no choice. I put together a team, the best of the best, humans and aliens alike. We had to use every trick in the book to get inside that prison. Stealth tech, hacking, disguises, brute force, you name it, we did it. Joseph's voice grew tense as he relived the harrowing operation. It was a maze in there, all winding corridors and security checkpoints. We had to fight for every inch, blasting our way through guards, dodging sentry drones. I thought my heart would burst out of my chest. The adrenaline was pumping so hard. He paused, his gaze distant. When we found him, I almost didn't recognize him. They'd worked him over good, beaten him to a pulp. But there was still fire in his eyes, a defiance that couldn't be broken. Joseph's voice grew ragged with emotion. Getting out was even harder than getting in. Alarms blaring, guards swarming from every direction. We fought like cornered rats, all blood and desperation. I saw good soldiers fall, friends I'd known for years, cut down before my eyes. He closed his eyes for a moment, grief etched into every line of his face. Somehow we made it out, dragged our wounded to the extraction point, the alien leader slung over my shoulder. As the shuttle lifted off, I looked back at that hellhole, smoke rising from the guard towers we'd blown to bits. Joseph sighed, the weight of memory heavy on his shoulders. We got him out, delivered him to safety, but the cost, it was so damn high. I lost count of how many body bags we filled, how many condolence letters I had to write. It was a victory, but it sure as hell didn't feel like one. Joseph fell silent for a moment, his eyes distant as he wrestled with the painful memories of the fallen resistance fighters. He took a deep breath, then fixed Novak with a determined gaze. We knew we had to hit the Ascendancy where it hurt, Joseph said, his voice low and intense. Not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of the people. We had to show the galaxy the truth about Carlson and his regime. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the bar. We started small, gathering testimonies from survivors of the Ascendancy's brutality, refugees, former prisoners, anyone who had seen firsthand the horrors they inflicted. We recorded their stories, their pain, their anger. Joseph's voice grew harder, as he recounted the Resistance's covert operations. We hit the Ascendancy's communication networks, hacking into their systems to leak classified documents, battle plans, weapon schematics, internal memos that revealed the depths of their cruelty. We broadcast them across every frequency we could, letting the evidence speak for itself. He paused, his gaze turning inward as he recalled a particularly harrowing mission. One of our biggest coups was when we managed to infiltrate one of their secret prison camps, a place where they sent dissidents, rebels, anyone who dared to speak out against the regime. The conditions there— He shook his head, his jaw clenched. It was like something out of a nightmare. Prisoners beaten, starved, subjected to unthinkable tortures. Joseph's voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes haunted. We knew we had to get proof to show the galaxy what was really happening, so we smuggled in hidden cameras, planted them throughout the camp, and then, on a prearranged signal, we broadcast the feed live, hacking into every vid screen and holoprojector we could reach. He let out a shuddering breath, the memories still raw. The images, they were horrific. Emaciated prisoners huddled in filthy cells, guards brutalizing them without mercy. Screams of agony echoing through the halls. And through it all, the Ascendancy's logo, emblazoned on every wall, every uniform like a twisted badge of honor. Joseph's voice grew stronger as he described the aftermath of the broadcast. The galaxy erupted in outrage. Protests, riots, entire planets rising up against the Ascendancy, people of every race, every species, united in their disgust and their determination to bring Carlson down. He sat back, a fierce light in his eyes. It was a turning point, that broadcast. It showed us that we could win this fight, not just through force of arms, but through the power of truth. That if we could just open people's eyes to the reality of the Ascendancy's evil, they would join us, stand with us. Joseph's voice rang with conviction as he spoke. From that moment on, we redoubled our efforts. More hacks, more leaks, more daring raids to expose their crimes. And with each revelation, more and more people flocked to our cause, swelling our ranks, giving us hope that we could finally end this nightmare. He paused, his gaze boring into Novak's. But the Ascendancy wasn't about to go down without a fight. And what they did next— Joseph's voice trailed off, his eyes hardening with a grim memory. Joseph's expression hardened as he delved into the harrowing final days of the Resistance's struggle against the Ascendancy. His voice was low and intense as he recounted the desperate, all-out assault the Ascendancy launched on the Resistance's secret base. They hit us with everything they had, Joseph said grimly, his eyes distant with the memory. Dropships full of shock troopers, tanks, artillery, the works. Our perimeter defenses held them off for a while, but we knew it was only a matter of time. He described the frantic chaos inside the base as the Resistance fighters scrambled to hold off the onslaught. Barricades were hastily erected in the corridors, choke points where the defenders could funnel the enemy and cut them down with overlapping fields of fire. The air rang with the deafening chatter of automatic weapons, the sizzle of energy beams, and the cries of the wounded. It was brutal, close-quarters fighting, Joseph said, his jaw clenched. Grappling with the Ascendancy troops hand-to-hand when they got too close, watching your friends get cut down right beside you, no time to even think about it. But even as they fought with desperate ferocity, Joseph knew it was a losing battle. The Ascendancy troops just kept coming, wave after relentless wave, slowly grinding down the Resistance fighters through sheer numbers and firepower. He described the frantic planning, the hasty selection of a small strike team. Joseph and a handful of the Resistance's best fighters, humans and aliens alike, each one ready to lay down their lives for the cause. We managed to slice into their ship-to-ship comms, spoof a transmission to trick them into bringing us aboard, Joseph recounted. They fell for it, but just barely. We knew we'd only have one shot at this. He shook his head, remembering the heart-pounding tension as they boarded the command ship, disguised in stolen Ascendancy armor. Every second expecting to be discovered, every step a nerve-wracking gamble. We split up planted demo charges at key structural points, Joseph said. Reactor control, life support, weapons systems, anything to cripple the ship, But the whole time, we knew our real target was the bridge, Carlson himself. Joseph's voice grew ragged as he recounted the desperate firefight that erupted when they finally reached the bridge. Carlson's elite guards, the finest killers in the Ascendancy, throwing themselves at the intruders with fanatical zeal. Energy beams crisscrossed the smoke-choked air, consoles exploded in showers of sparks, bodies tumbled and sprawled on the deck plates. "I saw Carlson through the haze barking orders from the command dais," Joseph said hoarsely. "We fought our way towards him, inch by blood-soaked inch. Hector, Zix, Johansson. I watched them fall one by one, buying the rest of us a few more precious seconds." His voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with the weight of memory. "In the end, it was just me and him, Carlson and me, slugging it out like a pair of back-alley brawlers, fists and feet and pure bloody-minded rage. He was strong, fast, but I had something he didn't. I had the screams of every soul he'd ever ground under his boot heel driving me forward." Joseph's eyes lost focus, his breath coming shallow and fast. "I don't remember much after that, just flashes. The feel of his jaw cracking under my fist, the hot spray of blood, and then it was over. He was down, and the ship was coming apart around me. Klaxons howling, bulkheads buckling. I stumbled to the escape pods, left him there to burn with his dreams of empire." The old soldier fell silent, his gaze boring into Novak's. The weight of his tale hung heavy in the air between them, a testament to the terrible sacrifices that had been made, the lives given in the name of freedom. But even as the memories threatened to drag him down, Joseph clung to a grim thread of satisfaction. Carlson was dead. The Ascendancy was broken, and though the cost had been high, the dream of a galaxy where humans and aliens could live in peace was still alive. It had been bought with blood and tears and unimaginable courage, but it was a worthy price. A price Joseph knew he and his fallen comrades would gladly pay again, if called upon. The old soldier leaned back in his chair, his eyes glinting with a hint of steel. "But we both know that's not the end of it, kid. There's always going to be another Carlson, another would-be tyrant looking to grind the galaxy under their boot. And when they come crawling out of the shadows, you can bet your ass there'll be another bunch of stubborn contrary bastards like us ready to stand in their way. Because that's what we do. That's who we are. May we always remember that no victory comes without a price, and that the choices we make in war echo through the ages." Joseph's voice grew heavy with sorrow as he described the aftermath of the Ascendancy's defeat. The cost was incalculable. Entire worlds burned, civilizations collapsed. The death toll on both sides defied comprehension. He shook his head, his eyes distant. The physical destruction was one thing. Cities reduced to rubble, ecosystems ravaged by the weapons we unleashed. But the scars on the soul of the galaxy, those ran even deeper. Joseph spoke of the long, painful process of rebuilding, of trying to stitch together a galaxy torn apart by conflict. It wasn't just about bricks and mortar, about replanting fields and re-establishing trade routes. It was about healing the wounds in hearts and minds, about learning to trust again after so much betrayal. His voice took on a harder edge as he recounted the trial of Victor Carlson and his cohorts. It was a spectacle like none other. Carlson, the great demagogue, reduced to a snarling beast in chains. The evidence laid out day after day, painting a picture of cruelty and megalomania that shocked even the most jaded observers. Joseph's fist clenched as he recalled the moment of sentencing. Life imprisonment, on some barren rock at the edge of known space. Some said it was too good for him, that he deserved to suffer as he had made others suffer. But I think, in a way, it was a fate worse than death. To be alone with his failures, his dreams of power turned to ashes in his mouth. Joseph described the sanctions, the restrictions placed on Earth's expansion and military might. They clipped our wings, hobbled our fleets, said it was for the safety of all, that we couldn't be trusted with the tools of our own destruction. But to many of us it felt like a punishment, a collar around our necks for the sins of a few. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze turning inward. We had won the war, but at what cost? Our standing in the galaxy, our pride, our very identity. We had become the monsters we sought to destroy, and now we had to live with that knowledge. Joseph fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Novak, his mind reeling from the tale of tragedy and triumph, could only nod in stunned acknowledgement. Joseph clasped his hand, his grip firm despite his age. Easy. No, but necessary. We must remember, Novak. Remember the heights we reached and the depths we sunk to. Remember the sacrifices, the sorrow, the hard-won wisdom. For if we forget, we are doomed to repeat our mistakes. With a final nod, Novak turned and walked out of the bar, Joseph's words echoing in his mind. The future was uncertain, the wounds of the past still raw, but perhaps with understanding and vigilance they could yet find a way forward. A path to redemption, to a galaxy where the name of humanity was spoken not with fear, but with respect. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.